In the 1600s, the island at the mouth of the Hudson River was always changing, like a restless frontier wind. At first, it was only a small trading post. The Dutch called it New Amsterdam. Wooden houses stood close together. Muddy roads ran between them. A small but strong fort watched over the harbor. This place soon became important. Rival empires wanted control of it. One day, English warships appeared offshore, but there was no battle. Without a single shot, the colony changed hands. The Dutch language slowly faded. A new government arrived, and the settlement received a new name. By the end of the century, the town stood alert and growing. It had become a meeting point of trade, power, and ambition, on the edge of a vast new continent. This was New York in the 1600s. In 1609, the landing of Henry Hudson marked the first European moment along the river that would later bear his name. His crew stepped onto a marshy, tree-covered shore. This land was already alive with trade routes used by the Lenape people. It was a quiet moment, but it soon drew merchants, settlers, and competing empires. The beginning was small. It was uncertain. It was simple. Yet it opened the door to everything that came after. In 1626, Dutch officials acquired Manhattan Island from the Lenape people. The exchange was later valued at about 24 guilders worth of goods. The agreement was quiet and practical, but it was deeply misunderstood between two very different cultures. Still, it gave the Dutch a foothold. They soon strengthened it with a fort. In the early days of New Amsterdam, building the settlement meant endless hard labor. Settlers cut down Manhattan's thick forests with hand axes. They dragged heavy logs through mud. They raised houses, wooden fences, and storehouses. The air filled with wood smoke, with sweat, with the sharp crack of splitting timber. A small colony was carving itself out of the wilderness. One beam, one plank, one hard day at a time. In 1626, Fort Amsterdam rose at the southern tip of Manhattan. It was a rough barrier of wood and earth, built to protect the young Dutch colony. From its walls, soldiers watched the changing tides in the harbor. They looked out over the warehouses of the West India Company. They also watched the fragile beginnings of New Amsterdam. The fort was a shield, and it was a statement. This colony planned to stay. In 1644, Dutch leaders and native tribes signed a series of fragile treaties. They hoped to calm years of bloodshed. Around council fires and simple wooden tables, envoys exchanged wampum shells, careful promises, and uneasy compromises. These agreements brought a brief and difficult peace. It was based more on exhaustion than on trust. Still, it gave New Amsterdam a chance to breathe and a chance to rebuild. In 1655, enslaved Africans were brought to New Amsterdam in growing numbers. Their forced labor became part of the colony's docks, farms, and households. They were sold as property. They lived under harsh rules and constant watch. It was a quiet but brutal turning point. Chains became a fixed part of the young city's economy. Inside a home in mid-17th century New Amsterdam, daily life unfolded in a single crowded room. A brick fireplace provided warmth. Light passed through small, lead-framed windows. It fell on rough wooden tables, wool blankets, and tin plates set neatly on shelves. Families rose early. The air smelled of porridge. Wooden chairs scraped across the floor. Children helped grind grain or carry water. Adults handled daily tasks, mending nets, splitting firewood, preparing salted meat for winter. The air carried wood smoke, dried herbs, and the damp river wind slipping through narrow gaps. Evenings were quiet but close. Candles burned low. Stories were told. Prayers were whispered. Tools were set out for the next morning's work. Life was simple. It was disciplined. It was shared. Every task, from cooking and sewing to cleaning and caring for animals, kept a steady rhythm of survival in a settlement that was growing, but still very young. In 1664, English warships entered the harbor. Their guns pointed toward the fort, which still bore the Dutch lion. Outmatched and divided, New Amsterdam offered little resistance. The protests of Peter Stuyvesant slowly faded. Many residents wanted a more stable government. With a quiet surrender, the city passed into English hands. It received a new name, New York. Its future changed course, without a single shot fired. In 1667, the Treaty of Breda made official what force had already begun. The Dutch gave up New Netherland to England. In return, they received distant interests in Suriname. The agreement confirmed New York as English territory. It ended Dutch hopes of reclaiming the colony. With a stroke of diplomacy, the city's new identity was set. Its laws, its loyalties, and its future were now tied to the English Empire. In 1673, Dutch ships suddenly entered the harbor. They took the city by force. For a brief time, the old flags returned. The city was renamed New Orange. It was a year of unrest and uncertainty. But diplomacy moved faster than cannons. Under the next treaty, the colony was returned to England. New Orange once again became New York. The moment was short, a final flash of the old Dutch world before the English future closed around it. By 1679, the old Dutch Stadhuis served as New York's City Hall. It was a leftover from New Amsterdam, now working under English rule. Merchants, judges, and clerks moved through its narrow rooms. They settled disputes. They recorded the business of a growing international port. The building stood as a reminder of the city's Dutch past. It was still useful, still central. Even as New York pushed forward and shaped a new identity of its own. Around 1680, New York grew quickly under English control. The population rose above 4,000 people. New brick houses appeared along the streets. The harbor grew busier, filled with Atlantic trade. At the same time, the number of enslaved people increased sharply. Their labor shaped the workforce and the daily life of the colony. By 1679, New York's Great Dock stretched out into the East River. It had become the colony's busiest gateway. Merchants, sailors, and laborers crowded the wooden planks. They unloaded barrels of sugar, bundles of animal hides, and stacks of tobacco. More ships arrived one after another from the Atlantic. The dock creaked and groaned without rest. Its constant noise spoke of growing ambition. A small port was quickly becoming a key link in the trade network of an empire. By 1680, homes in New York still showed strong Dutch influence. Roofs were steep. Brick fronts faced the street. Thick wooden beams supported the walls. Even after years of English rule, newer buildings added only small English touches. Sliding windows, wider chimneys. The streets still looked and felt Dutch. The city, like its people, was a mix in transition. The old defensive wall still marked the northern edge of the settlement. It followed the road that would later become Wall Street. The wooden barriers were worn, but they still stood. Where the wall met the East River stood the Watergate. It was a small, reinforced passage. Carts, travelers, and goods entered the town from the river, all under careful watch. In 1689, New York's militia gathered during a time of unrest. The news of change across the Atlantic had reached the colony. Merchants, craftsmen, and laborers drilled on the commons. They were a mix of Dutch, English, and people born in the colony, caught between shifting loyalties. In the confusion, Many officers signed a declaration. They supported Jacob Leisler. They rejected the old royal appointees. But the uprising was brief. After that moment of resolve, the colony soon returned to royal control. By year's end, the Crown's authority stood once more. In 1689, New York was tense and unsettled. News from England spoke of kings rising and kings dying. The colony was unsure who truly ruled. Merchants argued in taverns. Soldiers drilled on the commons. Ordinary residents watched the harbor, waiting for ships that might bring orders or trouble. The city lived in uneasy suspense, caught between rumor and doubt and the shifting tides of empire. By 1693, New York was still a tight frontier town under close control of the English military. There were no professional police forces. Instead, order was kept by the night watch. Men carried wooden clubs and candle lanterns. They walked the rough cobblestone streets after dark. Governor Benjamin Fletcher issued strict orders. He sought to control unruly taverns and rising crime along the docks. Dim whale oil lamps were placed outside homes by order of the government. They lined Wall Street and Broad Street, casting weak light into the river fog. This city did not roar with machines. It echoed with horse hooves, clanking chains, and the calls of night guards. It was a community holding itself together, trying to keep order as waves of newcomers passed through its streets. By 1699, Pearl Street had become one of the busiest streets in New York. It curved along the old shoreline. Merchants, craftsmen, and sailors crowded its wooden shops. The air carried the smell of tar, spices, and the river wind. It was a reminder of how closely the city's life was tied to the sea that sustained it.